Who is Egg? A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms identity and Game of Thrones history explained. Warning: this article contains spoilers for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms Episode 3 George R.R. Martin's Tales of Dunk and Egg novella collection. Egg is one of the main characters in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and his true identity has an intriguing link to Game of Thrones. The story of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms premiered in January 2026 and is already renewed for Season 2 at HBO. The show is the most recent Game of Thrones spin-off after House of the Dragon. The show, much like House of the Dragon, restores the franchise to its former glory after the divisive nature of Game of Thrones ending. It does so by shrinking its focus from dragons, magic, and White Walkers into a more lighthearted, character-driven story based on George R.R. Martin's collection of novellas Tales of Dunk and Egg. Therefore, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms differences from Game of Thrones will be fairly evident, despite their shared setting. One of the primary ways in which the former will differ from the latter is by focusing strictly on two characters in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms rather than a host of members from Westeros' great houses. Sir Duncan the Tall, also known as Dunk and Egg. Where Dexter Sol Ansel's Egg is concerned, his real identity is overly intriguing and features strong links to Game of Thrones' House of the Dragon and the wider world of Westeros. Egg serves as Dunk's squire in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, though his real identity is even more interesting. Egg is actually Aegon Targaryen, the fourth-born son of Prince Maekar Targaryen, who himself is the son of King Daeron II Targaryen. The latter is the king at the onset of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms before it eventually falls to Maekar himself. Egg's notable family members relation: Maekar Targaryen, father Daeron Targaryen, brother Aerion Targaryen, brother Aemon Targaryen, brother Baelor Targaryen, uncle Aegon Targaryen was raised as a prince before becoming the squire known solely as Egg. The latter name came from the pronunciation of Aegon in the Game of Thrones franchise Aegon, with his older brother calling him Egg from a young age. In A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Egg doesn't immediately reveal that he's a member of House Targaryen until Episode 3. When Aerion goes after Tanzell in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms Episode 3 for disrespecting his family in the puppet show, Dunk tries to stop him. Before Aerion can get payback on Dunk, Egg intervenes, confirming that he's Aerion's little brother. Concerning why Aegon Targaryen hides his real identity and goes under the alias Egg, the answer links to a core plot in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms Season 1. The show's first season centers around a tourney at Ashford Meadow, where Aegon was supposed to squire for his eldest brother Daeron. However, in GRRM's Tales of Dunk and Egg books, it is revealed that Daeron had no desire to compete in the tourney. As a result, Daeron flees with Aegon in tow. Aegon shaves his head so that no one will recognize his identifying Targaryen features, which Aerion comments on when he reunites with Egg in Episode 3. Before Egg reveals his true identity as a Targaryen in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms Episode 3, there are a few clues pointing to his secret. For example, in Episode 2, Egg becomes notably concerned when he sees members of the Targaryen family arrive for the tournament. His vocabulary and knowledge of the Seven Kingdoms history are also more fitting of a royal. The remaining sections of this article explain what happens to Dunk and Egg in GRRM's novellas, as well as their fates in the Game of Thrones universe. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms Season 1 adapts the novella titled The Hedge Knight, which follows Dunk's time at the tournament with Egg by his side as his squire. After the tourney, in the novella, Egg begs his father Maekar to let him continue squiring for Dunk. His father reluctantly agreed, leading to the further adventures of Dunk and Egg. After this, Dunk and Egg travel to various regions across Westeros, including Dorne and Oldtown. The second major story, The Sworn Sword, will be adapted for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms Season 2, and involves Dunk and Egg handling a dispute over who owns a river in the Reach. During The Sworn Sword, the duo encounter the Blackfire, a group of illegitimate descendants of Aegon IV Targaryen who were legitimized by the king on his deathbed. This led to the Second Blackfire Rebellion against the Iron Throne, of which Dunk and Egg find themselves at the center. If A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms continues for Season 3, it would presumably adapt The Mystery Knight, which will see Dunk and Egg become involved in another tournament. The story also features a few notable names in the Game of Thrones universe, such as the Starks and Freys. Eventually, after his squiring days were done, Aegon will go on to become one of the many Targaryen kings in the Game of Thrones universe. He does so despite being the fourth-born son of Maekar I, leading Aegon V to be known as the Unlikely. Aegon's eldest brother Daeron dies from a pox illness, while the second-born son Aerion becomes known for his cruelty and madness. In his madness, Aerion drinks a cup of wildfire, thinking it would turn him into a dragon. This means that upon Makar's death, only Aemon, a master, and Aegon remain. A great council is hosted to decide the next king, during which Aemon insists Aegon should sit on the Iron Throne, explaining how Egg becomes Aegon B. Targaryen. Aegon's reign is known for the efforts of the king in aiding the small folk of Westeros. This causes some dissent among other lords, but Aegon squashes several rebellions, including the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion, during his time on the throne. Towards the end of his reign, Aegon feels he needs the power that the dragons once gave to House Targaryen to convince the other lords to support his plans to help the small folk. Sadly, Aegon B's attempts at hatching dragon eggs lead to the tragedy of Summerhall, a fire that kills him, his eldest son, and Sir Duncan the Tall. Given how big a role Egg will play in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the question of how he was referenced in Game of Thrones is an obvious one. In answer, Egg was referenced a few times, specifically by Aemon Targaryen, his brother, and the Maester of the Night's Watch. In Game of Thrones Season 1, as Jon Snow considers deserting the Night's Watch to help his family, Aemon reveals himself as Aemon Targaryen, mentioning that his brother Aegon became king after he refused the throne. In Game of Thrones Season 5, Aemon falls ill with dementia. On his deathbed, Aemon says, "Egg, I dreamed that I was old." This is proof of Aemon's addled mind flashing back to his younger days with Aegon, as evidenced by the nickname Aemon coined for him. After A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms fleshes out Egg's story, these references in Game of Thrones will likely only grow more tragic after we truly see his adventures played out on screen.